Okay, so to maybe fill out a little bit what we did yesterday. So the majority of the commentaries assume that Nadav and Avihus sinned, and therefore their death was a punishment, and that's what's more well known. But before we get to those, I think today let's focus on two positions that don't take it that way. We touched on both of them yesterday, so that's why I want to expand on them. So one perspective is that they ended up being a karban. And they quoted from the Midrashim, and I'm pretty sure there is a Midrash like this, though it could be that this has just become more popular recently, and it's a very Hasidish idea. But it is ancient. It does appear in ancient sources, though according to Al-Hatara, I have to look in my notes if I have a Midrash on it also. The earliest source for it is Philo. Philo was contemporaneous with a lot of Chazal, or even earlier than a lot of Chazal, so it does reflect positions that are flowing around. I'm pretty sure it does appear in a Midrash, but I didn't have the time to make sure that was right and that I wasn't misremembering it from Philo. But Philo takes the perspective that, if you follow, the fire that consumes them is right after we talk about the fire on the Mizbeach, so therefore, whatever they did, maybe there's a little bit of a sin, but fundamentally they are carbons. This is what he writes. This is in Philo on Dreams. But Moses will not allow the sacred reasonings about Nadav to be bewailed, for they were not seized by a wild beast, were taken up by a rush of unquenchable fire and undying splendor. Since in sincerity they cast off sloth and decay, and consecrated their zeal, hot and fiery, flesh-consuming and swiftly moving to piety. This fire was foreign to earthly existence. Right, this is how he reads it. Right, not Eish Zara, like Usher Zar. It was totally foreign to this world. Since it belonged to the realm of God, not going up to the altar by the regular steps, for that was forbidden by law, but proceeding rapidly onwards with a favorable gale, and being conducted up even to the threshold of heaven, becoming dissolved into ethereal beams like a whole burnt offering. Thank you, Philo. Philo it is a lot of fun to read Philo in general. He's really quite wild. He's like an uber rationalist who tries to be miyashiv Torah with Greek philosophy. It's like his goal in life. It's really interesting.
Is the uber rationalist guy?
Yes, actually, yes. Sure. Anyways, so that's one perspective, but this is not a punishment. The Rashbam, as we noted yesterday, has this surprising position that, yes, it's not a punishment. It was a tragic accident that they were crossing the crossfire of God's fire. Wrong place, wrong time. Which sounds quite surprising. It really does. So there's an excellent article by Rav Tamir Granot where he takes Rashbam as Pshat, but with enough of a twist, or he claims this is what Rashbam is getting at, and he may be right, to make it reasonable. So before we get to the people who think it's mamish punishment, let's talk about this Rashbam position, because I think there is a way of making it very mistaber in what we know about the Mishkan. So he argues that yes, it is a tragic accident, but not like they were driving to shul and out of nowhere someone sped up and they got into a car accident, right? That's not what we mean, right? What's the nature of the accident? So we said the nature of the accident is they did sin. I mean, not really sin. What did they do? They didn't show enough care and enough reverence, meaning they made a mistake. Meaning or I'll put it differently. Tamir Granot argues that yes, there was an element of punishment. What is the problem with punishment? Right? Let me phrase it differently. And this is what why he argues Rashbam is pshat. Said, as we'll see maybe tomorrow, right? The majority of the Mefarshim take it that this was mamish a punishment. What's the problem with saying it's a punishment? What's the theological problem with saying it's a punishment?
They were bringing from boat.
Okay, but it's an Eish Rasher Lo Tziva. So you could say it's even, or let me put it differently. Even if it is a sin, what's the problem with saying this is punishment? Proportionality. Right, that many of the Mefarshim are bothered, right, even if it is a punishment, it seems to be disproportional. Like, what exactly did they do that was a capital crime, right? They died. Right, you have to remember, it wasn't just...
pretty bad. Just the Mishkan, everyone's all excited.
Good, so that's what the people will say if they want to say this is a classic sin and punishment. Right? But he says, let's say, like many people, you look at this and say, again, you can explain why it's really as egregious as we say it is. Because let's say you look at it and you say, look, they brought a Shesher Lo Tziva and they got the death penalty. That seems a bit much.
Right.
So he said he thinks the Rashbam offers a solution, which is that we actually know that this is not a one-off occurrence. Right? In general, there are many people who do things that don't warrant the death penalty, but they end up dying in a tragic accident. What?
If the guy like that.
Correct, which is also the Haftorah for Shmini. Right? The Haftorah for Shmini. Why did I take a Hanach? Right? This is the time when a Chumash is much easier, so now I don't have to find it. Right? That's great. Right? The let's see, where do they put it? Okay, 1 second. They do the usually in the appendices here. It's list of. Oh yeah, there it is. I got it. It's okay. Zev, it's okay. Right? I was like, they do have a list here of all the Haftarah, right? Oh wait, no, they don't. Wait, Torah readings, Maftir, and Haftarah. No?
Shmuel.
I know it's in Shmuel.
I feel like it was a pretty big...
Oh, that's what it is.
It's like a Vodazora. It's like...
What?
Because the only...
No, of course. If you want to say that it's that egregious, you'll go in the direction saying it's a Vodazora as...
Even if you don't want to say it's a Vodazora, I mean, it's a file. You gotta spend like a whole, bunch
it's
of
page 736. 736.
And they're going ahead and being lax on the rules that God specifically said.
Right. Yeah. So he says if you read the psukim of Uzzah, right, in Perek Vav of Shmuel Bet. Right, it's falling and he stretched out to catch it. And God is furious and he kills him. And everyone, I hope, looks at that and says,
This one's tough, but this one opening says God was angry, I thought.
Correct. But, so there's two ways you could take that. You could say the sin is really, you may not know why it's that bad, but it is as egregious as the punishment that comes to it. The alternative is, and this is, if you remember in Parshat Kitisa, there's a lot of this language. Right? What does God say in Kitisa after the Egel? I can't live amongst the Jews. Why? Because a little mistake and I'll have to destroy them. Meaning God's imminence is dangerous, right, in Tanakh. Right, in Tanakh, God's imminence makes it that everything that outside of God's imminence might be a minor crime, with God's imminence, it's not really a capital crime as much as it's just spiritually dangerous, right? To sin when God is present, or in God's intent, right, with God's intense things, is literally playing with fire, right? That's, because God is an Eshochla, right? That's, right? I mean, you think about Kitisa, right? What's God saying? Look, their sin doesn't qualify for the death penalty, and therefore if I send my malach and not me, they could sin and survive. But if I'm present, then they will die. Right? Because everything, when God is present, is just more dangerous. Right?
So what say more dangerous, not that if they sit in front of God's presence, it's much more...
So you could say it's more severe, but, right, it's either more severe or it's just... Right, there does seem to be an element when you read through Chumash, right? Ki azar akarev yumat, right? Ki eish, right? This notion that it's not per se punishment. It's that, right? God, it's like, I'll put it differently, right? Let's say you are, you're horsing around on a couch, right? And you end up falling off, right? And you hurt yourself, right? So is that a punishment? I mean, it's not really a punishment, right? But yes, it is a consequence of what you did, and you did something wrong, right? If you did the same thing on the guardrail over the Grand Canyon, right, and you fall. So again, was it more sinful? No.
It's a lot stupider. The guy.
Well, that's exactly the point. That's what I'm saying. Is that you could say it's a punishment, but my point is it's not quite a punishment. It's saying, look, what was really the crime? The crime is being frivolous. But it's not that you don't have to look. You could look at it as a punishment and say it's an affront to God if you're not careful with the aron, right? And therefore the stakes are higher. You could also say, look, it's like horsing around on the guardrail over the Grand Canyon, where yes, it's your fault, right? Yes, this is the consequence of your action, right? But at a fundamental level, there's no difference between horsing around on the couch and horsing around the guardrail to Grand Canyon. It's just that if you mess up, the consequences are much worse, right? And it could be, and this is what really Tamir Granot... What?
I see the two.
So Tamir Granot argues that's really what the Rashbam is getting at. Again, we're trying to understand the Rashbam, right? Is that the Rashbam is saying it was an accident, right? It was a tragic work accident, but that is the cost of working in the Mikdash. You're working with radioactive, material, and if you mess up and don't follow safety protocol, right? Nowadays at hotels, it's like not safety protocol to give out an Advil because, it might be someone's allergic, and then you'll be sued. But if you do and nothing happens, or even if you do, what's gonna, right? Okay, right? But if you don't follow safety protocol and you work in a nuclear lab, right? Again, the consequences are greater, and therefore, yes, in the end of the day, it's not more sinful.
Right.
It's more frivolous, and yes, there is a higher level of sin in the sense that the more dangerous the place you work in, the more you are morally obligated to be careful. But at the end of the day, it's not a crime. It's what we call in legal terminology gross negligence. Right? I mean, that's really what he's arguing. Is that according to Rashbam, it's not that they sinned. It's that they were negligent, but when you're negligent in the context of the Mikdash, as we know from Tanakh, it is a very dangerous thing to do. And therefore, if there's going to be an accident, right, it's not going to be the accident of falling off the couch, it's going to be the accident of falling off the Grand Canyon. Right? Same thing in the Mikdash, right? You accidentally, you accidentally are in the crossfire of God's fire, then yes, right, you make a slight mistake, a slight miscalculation, you aren't 100%, right, as, following the rules, the consequences will be very dire, right, and therefore, what that opens the possibility of, again, we don't have to say this, and the majority of the Farshim don't, right, the majority of the Farshim say, no, this is really crime and punishment, right, with the Rashbam, as Tamir Granot argues, he's saying it's not really crime and punishment per se. What it is mild mistake, in a dangerous place, consequences are therefore magnified. Right? And therefore you don't have to argue that there's strict proportionality here. What you have to just recognize is that even non-proportionally there is the danger factor, right? That's really what he's adding. So there is a level of sin, right? But that's not primarily what explains the proportionality, right? Okay? Good. We'll do the more classic ones tomorrow.